Is this a good shot? YouTube, it's time for yet another 24-hour challenge. Yes, yet another 24-hour challenge, except this time it is spooky season edition. Ooh, yes. That's right. You read the title, you've seen the thumbnail. It's Stephen King time, baby. Reading as many Stephen King books as possible in 24 hours. I think without wasting any more of our time, here's how the rules are gonna go. Okay, 1, the clock is going to run for 24 hours. I am not going to stop it for anything. If I have to use the bathroom, if I have to stop reading to do something, I'm not going to stop it. The clock runs for 24 hours, and at the end of 24 hours, however many books I've read, is however many books I've read. 2, only author that I can read any material from is Stephen King. Who'd have thought? And the third thing, I'm only reading novels. I'm not reading short stories because I have a few novels that I have left on my physical TBR. Yes, I'm getting desperately close to having no Stephen King books on my shelf that I have not read, which is kind of quite astounding to say. I somehow have caught up on that. That just means I'm gonna have to buy more books. First victim of the night is Desperation. Editing Ian for each book introduction, do like this voiceover of reading the back, and that would be really cool. Roll the montage. But first, before we move on, I'd like to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Skillshare. If you've been a consumer of YouTube content for this long and haven't heard about Skillshare, listen up. Speaking about editing, I've had the opportunity in the last few weeks to be able to use Skillshare and learn from actual professionals about how to improve my technical thinking and skill surrounding editing. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creative people. They have thousands, guys, literally thousands of classes in countless categories, ranging from beginner, novice, to advanced. Skillshare is a platform that has been designed by creatives for creatives. Just over the last few weeks, I've been wanting to get better at editing and filming and production and thinking about ideas surrounding YouTube and being creative. And with classes and learning pathways on Skillshare, it's made it so much easier to learn. Skillshare can help you take your career, skills, hobbies, passions, or other side hustles to the next level. There's so many categories of classes that are available on Skillshare. There's pretty much anything for anyone. There's film, illustration, animation, design, you name it, the list is absolutely endless. Some really exciting improvements that Skillshare has made over the past few months have been smarter class categories, 3 new class topics which include creative careers, creative inspiration, and AI and innovation, and finally the ability to find classes by software and material. Guys, I cannot tell you how useful that has been. We're trying to learn more about the editing software that I use and the thumbnail software that I use. Skillshare has made it easier to find topics based on those softwares. The first 500 people to use my link down in the description will receive their first month for free of Skillshare. Again, don't miss out on this deal. Get started today. Click the link down below. And thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. For all intents and purposes, Police Officer Colleen Trajan, Chief Law Enforcement Officer for the small mining town of Desperation, Nevada, appears to be completely insane. He's taken to stopping vehicles along the desolate Interstate 50 and abducting unwary travelers with various unusual ploys. The secrets embedded in Desperation's landscape and the horrifying evil that infects the town like some viral hot zone are both awesome and terrifying. There's something very wrong here in Desperation. An officer in Trajan is only at the surface of it. Hi, all right. Where are we at? 3 hours and 10 minutes in. I'm making some massive headway. I know that some of you are gonna come out in the woodworks in the comments and be like, how the frick did you do this? I will explain in a minute. I will explain in a moment. I'm on page 195. I did not start on page 1, okay? I did not somehow read 195 pages in 3 hours. I'm sure it's humanly possible, but it's not humanly possible with my eyes and my brain. The two things could not compute words that fast. This is not the first time I've tried to read this book this year. This is probably my 4th attempt. I think last time I read the first 2 chapters. And so I decided, since I've already read the first chapter enough times, I remember what happens. And I remember what happened in chapter 2, so I started on chapter 3. Chapter 3 starts on page 60. So I technically started on page 60 and I'm on page 195. That's a little bit better in 3 hours. Would you say? Would you say? You know, divide that evenly is about what I read in an hour. My gosh. Okay. The sheriff is insane. The sheriff is completely unhinged. At the rate it's going, I feel like the climax is already happening, and I have so much of this book to go. I'm probably, that's eyeballing this sucker's about 30%. I am certain that I think we've met all of the cast of characters that we're going to meet. A lot of the characters that have been introduced are in jail in this little town called Desperation. This guy is holding them hostage and torturing them and doing terrible things. Usually with Stephen King, when he builds a rather large cast of characters, they don't really converge until like the last 250 or so pages, give or take his big ones. I'm shocked that the majority of the cast, probably 80 to 90% of the cast, is already here. I feel like this is about to get absolutely wild, but it's already been wild, so I don't know how it's going to get even more wild. I don't know. He's got me interested because there's so many questions I have and little to no answers yet. I mean, the sheriff keeps speaking sometimes in another language, which I'm guessing is the cosmic horror side of things. I don't know if he's commanding coyotes, but coyotes, I mean, it seems like the desert is working with this man. This guy like commands an army of coyotes. It's kind of crazy. Kind of reminds me of Dracula with the wolves. But yeah, it's just fascinating. It's fascinating, the character work already. This little remote mining town, no one's there. I mean, he's done a really good job of making this place feel completely abandoned. Or maybe not abandoned, but maybe all the inhabitants are kaputs, murdered, gone. We've got a long night ahead of us. Let's get back to reading. You're gonna stay? All right. Hi. Yep. It is 1:30 in the morning. 6 hours in. I am on part 3. Making some good progress, brother. Page 329. Excellent. Excellent. I am not gonna lie. I have been drifting in and out of consciousness, especially around that midnight. When midnight hit, I was ready to hit the hay. And unfortunately, I was laying down, and I closed my eyes for about 20 seconds. There was a solid hour where I was reading, but not necessarily paying attention. Thankfully, it was during some dialogue and not necessarily during some high tension, high intensity stuff. Oh my gosh, dude, this commentary sucks so bad. I can't think, I'm so tired. Okay. Our entire cast is now assembled in desperation. They are desperate, and they're in desperation. Yes, I know. I've been saving that one. Stuff in this town is so fetching creepy. There's no one around. All of the homes and buildings and stuff are completely vacant. A sandstorm is blowing in, and of course it's a severe one. No visibility, people can't see where they're going. Yeah, there was a jailbreak. That was pretty cool. I'm really enjoying the faith element of this, where our boy David Carver literally fighting off all of the evil with faith. I think that's brilliant. I think that's so different for a horror novel. I've yet to see that in a Stephen King novel. So that's been really, really interesting. Even though I'm over 50% of the way in, things are just getting started. And I cannot imagine where they're going. This is giving me It vibes, just because this being cannot show its true form, and I'm sensing that the only way that this particular cosmic demon can survive is if it embodies, if it possesses something. Kind of creepy to be talking about at 1:30 in the morning. I'm not gonna lie. I've kind of hit that point where I'm tired, but I'm not tired. I think this is gonna hit me in about 30 minutes to an hour. I'm gonna be conked, or at least fighting conk. Is that a word? I don't know. Desperation. I fell asleep. Would you guess? But here's the kicker, everybody. I didn't just fall asleep for like 20 minutes. I closed my eyes at like 3 o'clock, maybe a little bit past that. It is now 7:15 in the morning. I slept for an entire 4 hours. Isn't that just delightful? I am, however, on page 455. It sucks that I am not done with this chunky beast yet. I was really hoping to be done with this behemoth by now, because this is the biggest book of the bunch. Let's finish this book, shall we? I'm done. I finished. I cannot tell you how good this feels. I'm all jazzed up. I got some energy now. That little nap that I took early this morning really helped me get through this. This book was wildly imaginative. I mean, goodness gracious. It's coming of age. It's found family. It's battle against good and evil. The way it ended, I could see where some people would be completely confused, and then others, if you really pay attention to the subtle nuggets that Stephen King is dropping for you along the way, it wraps up in a beautiful Stephen King fashion. I can't believe it. I'm finally done with this book. I've been trying to read this book most of this year, since February. But folks, we are 14 hours in. Let's get into the next book. Okay. Book 2, The Regulators, by Stephen King, written as Richard Bachman. Actually, put the thing here. Put the little read the back thing here. It's a gorgeous midsummer afternoon on Poplar Street in the peaceful suburbia of Wentworth, Ohio, where life is as pleasant as you ever dreamed it could be. But that's all about to end in a blaze of gunfire and sudden violence, forever shattering the tranquility and the good times here. For the physical makeup of Poplar Street itself is now being transformed into a surreal landscape straight out of the active imagination of the innocent and vulnerable Seth Garron, a young boy who's been exposed to and possessed by a horrific, otherworldly force of evil, one with sadistic and murderous intent and willing to use whatever means necessary to grow ever stronger. Stephen King, written as Richard Bachman, which is his pseudonym pen name. This is the companion novel to Desperation. This is a completely different story, yet they're in parallel universes. They don't end up converging, but I think something happens in The Regulators. It also happens in Desperation. And maybe Tack, the evil spirit, makes an appearance? I don't know. You can read one after the other. Doesn't really matter what order you read them in. Let's hit it. Am I stupid? I have to be stupid. This book makes no sense. It's entertaining, and I mean, for some reason I'm hooked to the page, but I couldn't tell you what the freaking blinking heck is going on. 139 pages in. 17 and a half hours in. And I don't know what the second book's about. Plot-wise, linear plot-wise, there truly is none right now. But what's interesting is off the bat, this book reintroduces you to all the characters that you knew in Desperation, except they're different. For instance, some are not adults, they're children. And some are not siblings, they're spouses. And some are just little bit different versions of themselves, and others are completely different, wildly different. And then there's new characters. Essentially, all hell breaks loose on this street in Columbus, Ohio. Just this one street. It's all because of this demon. That's literally what's happening. People are being shot down in the street. People are being ran over by cars. People are getting into car crashes. People driving up doing drive-bys on houses. It's the most chaotic thing I think I've ever read from Stephen King. I do find it fascinating that I'm reading names that I just read all night, but they're not the same people. I've made some progress. I gotta keep going. I'm gonna have 3 hours left when I finish this book. I'm gonna get back to the chaos on Poplar Street. Wish me luck. Hey. Alrighty. Folks, I'm so sorry to do this to you. I can't do this. I can't do this book. It's not that this is a bad book by any means. This is actually technically my first Richard Bachman. Sorry, I have something in my teeth. Anywho. It's just too all over the place for me right now. 24-hour challenges kind of suck the life and joy out of reading for pleasure, which is so funny because these videos are always so much fun. But this book is too chaotic for me right now. I cannot follow it along, especially because I got used to these characters and who they were for, over 600 pages. And now I'm diving into this. It just feels wacky a little bit and just over the top insane. So I'm excited to pick this back up later. Actually, I think I might pick this back up when I reread Desperation, so it's not going to be any time in the foreseeable future. Since I have DNF'd that, I moved on to the book that I really wanted to do for this video all along, and that is Bag of Bones. Editing Ian, you know what to do. Bag of Bones recounts the plight of 40-year-old best-selling novelist Mike Noonan, who was unable to stop grieving following the sudden death of his wife Jo, and can no longer bear to face the blank screen of his computer. His nights are plagued by vivid nightmares, all set at the main summer house he calls Sarah Laughs. Despite these dreams, or perhaps because of them, Mike returns to the lakeside getaway. He is then drawn into the mystery of Sarah Laughs, now the site of ghostly visitations, ever-escalating nightmares, and the sudden recovery of his writing ability. What are the forces that have been unleashed here? And what do they want of Mike Noonan? Bag of Bones, I'm on page 28. Yeah, that font size is ridiculous. I don't know, I think where I'm at right now, I would be close to 50 pages on a normal font size of a Stephen King book. Because I've been reading for over an hour. To me, in the book, I've made some serious headway, but according to the bookmark, I'm a big fat loser, so. But I'm already digging this way more than the regulators. This already has an amazing beginning. I don't know, Stephen King is, of course, he's widely acknowledged as America's best horror and terror writer. He's the master of the paranormal. It takes a book like this and an opening like this to find that he's really a genius at the everyday stuff. That he's a genius at the everyday man, everyday person, everyday character, real life, everyday situations that people go through. And yet he just somehow brings them to life in a way that you wouldn't expect it. I love it when he begins in a literary fiction way, takes you on the paranormal, takes you on the terrorizing and the horrifying journey. Because I think, as far as I'm aware, Bag of Bones is a ghost story. It's perfect for the spooky season. I may not finish this book by the time the timer's up, but when has that ever stopped me? When I guess I oughta wait before we go. Yeah, that's where we're at. I know I said I wouldn't pause it, but I did pause it to go help Ashlyn get some shots and some photos for the video that she's filming currently right now. I put the timer on hold just to be a bit more honest for you all. If I hadn't done that, it'd be close to 20 hours. Anywho, see you later. This book is really good.
Oh, the sun! Hi!
book is wild. We did it. We did it.
Richard, come here. We did it. We did it. Hi.
We're done. We're done. 24 hours down the drain. Okay, did I finish? No, not even freaking close. I'm going to be reading this probably for the rest of the month. I'm going to take a slower approach to it now that I don't have to kill myself rushing through all of this. That is definitely the downside to 24-hour challenges, but let's recap. This was what I wanted to read, and this is what I read. What are my thoughts? Desperation is 613 pages. The Regulators is 377 pages. And then Bag of Bones is 529 pages. I really don't know how I expected to do all of this. I did use audiobooks. I immersion read. That usually helps me read faster sometimes. 24 hours was not enough time to do all of this because this is well over 1,000 pages. That would be the most pages I've ever read in 24 hours, and I don't think that's even humanly possible with listening to audiobooks on 3 times speed, if that's even something that you can comprehend. But let's recap. Desperation, a story about an insane police officer who's been possessed by an ancient evil who kidnaps people off of Highway 50, takes them back to this little podunk mining town called Desperation to torture and murder them. Yeah. It all came down to the struggle for good and evil and the themes that are explored in this book. Honestly, very thought-provoking. Faith, divine intervention, the coming of age, at which Stephen King is probably the best at writing. It explores found family. Another thing that Stephen King does really well is the showdown between the forces of good and the forces of evil. This was a 4 out of 5. I feel like if I reread this sometime soon, I would probably give it a higher rating. The only thing is, trying to blitz through a 600-page novel is so hard. There's definitely some things that I missed. Desperation is one of Stephen King's probably best horror novels of the 90s. Excellent read. Next, The Regulators. Set in a parallel universe to Desperation, I don't think there's a right or wrong order to read them. I think going into Desperation first was a better move for my reading experience. So if you want my take on it, maybe start with Desperation and then read The Regulators. But again, there's no right or wrong consensus on which one you need to start with. Most of the cast of The Regulators is in Desperation. There's even mention of Desperation in this book. Most likely, if I had gotten to the end, we probably would have visited Desperation. But let's just say the same big baddie in Desperation is the same big baddie in The Regulators. If I can't follow along, I'm just not going to enjoy it. And it's not that this is a jumbled mess of a book, but you have to understand, at the time that I picked this up, I'd been trying to do this challenge for 14, 15 hours. The Regulators, from the get-go, is an all-out assault of chaos and insanity. I found it very interesting how he could take every single character and completely change who they were in The Regulators. Everything we knew from Desperation got plopped in a completely different world. Honestly, it's quite genius, and the fact that he wrote this under a pseudonym is even better, and come to find out these books were released on the very same day in 1996. I think that's a genius marketing move. They really need to be read together. I will come back to this. I may do a video where I go into these books in depth. If you want to see that, drop a comment. But overall, I cannot rate The Regulators because I DNF'd it. Lastly, Bag of Bones. I am only 176 pages into this book. I've been reading this book all afternoon and it's taken me so long to get there, but I think it's because there's a definite shift in this novel from other works that I've read of his from the 90s. Reading Desperation or reading things like Insomnia or Needful Things, these classic horror novels of Stephen King, they have similar tones, they have similar pacing. Bag of Bones takes more of a, it feels like it takes more of a literary fiction approach. He's giving you the horror along the way, and I'm excited to see the climax of this story. It feels like one of the greatest ghost stories I think I'll ever read. Stephen King, like I've said in other videos, Stephen King is master at writing the broken character. Boy, does he put Mike in a pickle. His wife Jo goes for a run on one of the hottest days of the year. There is I think it's a car crash, motorcycle crash, but as she's there on scene, as she tries to go over to help, she suffers an aneurysm and she dies there on the spot. Mike is one of those classic Stephen King characters that is an author. He develops writer's block because of his mourning and his grief. Anytime he even tries to approach writing after trying to come to terms with the loss of his wife, he gets physically sick. He takes the advice from a character who happens to be the main character of Insomnia, Mr. Ralph Roberts himself. He gets convinced to go on vacation, and so he goes to him and his late wife's lake house. I'm currently there at the house and going through all of his stressful, creepy, scary dreams and the appearances. I didn't finish it either, so I can't rate it yet. But that's what we have. That is what we have. This was a little bit disappointing. I hope you didn't hate this video, but Whatever. Thank you for sticking around, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, if you stuck around this long. And thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Remember, the first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive 1 month free of Skillshare. So click the link in the description and get started today. Folks, I'll see you in the next one.